of course, we all love live music. There's nothing like it. But it's also for the sense of community that it fosters. I know that sounds geeky. I buy that. I really do believe that. I think that there's nothing like the feeling in the room with all these people who are sharing an experience. And if you really want to be geeky, I really believe that when you sit down and you open your heart to what that musician or those artists are sharing with you, which is mostly their original work, their original music. If you can be open to that, then you receive something and you leave more than what you came in with.
Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by the Listening Room Network. Today's guest, Dani Goodband. How are you?
I'm peachy. How are you, Fran Snyder?
I'm doing great. So you are in Manhattan, Kansas?
I am, right in the middle of the most beautiful part of Kansas, right in the Flint Hills and the prairie.
Nice. I spent some time in Lawrence, Kansas, and I remember fondly driving the interstate and seeing the signs for the Little Apple as opposed to
That's us. Yes.
And I didn't know
us.
I didn't know if that's something you guys embraced or it's like is that just a goofy thing the mayor did?
Yeah, we think it's a hoot. Both. Definitely. We think it's a hoot.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about just your background, and then we'll get into your journey into the world of house concerts.
My background, like my personal background, or
yeah, like where are you from originally? What was your career? All that stuff. Yeah.
So I'm an Army brat, actually. So military, lived all over the place. Lived most of my life here in Kansas, though.
Okay.
Ended up at Kansas State University. I was a microbiologist. I worked in an immunophysiology lab for about 32 years or so until I retired.
So hang on. So you must be having a heck of a time right now with what's going on.
I have to tell you, I retired a little bit before I was really ready to do that because of some family issues. Hi, bud. Some family issues that were going on. I took care of my mom for a while.
Okay.
So I'm kind of salivating, would love to get back into things right now. Not possible, but yeah, really.
Is that a greyhound? That's
It is. That's Brad. Yeah, you're in Florida. You know all about these greyhounds, right?
We've
had greyhounds for about 25 years. He's kind of new to us. He's been with us for about a year now. Yeah, he's my buddy.
Dog. Well, good. I interrupted you, but I couldn't resist with the whole pandemic going on. Whenever you hear about somebody who's into microbiology or all that stuff. So anyway,
right.
So you went to Kansas for school. Where were you from? Were you from Kansas originally?
My family's from back east, New York, New Jersey, around there. But
the Army brat,
military kind of person. I'm born in Germany, so you sort of travel around a little bit. But I tell people that I'm from Kansas.
Okay.
Because I've lived here most of my life.
All right. Kansans
will say I am not from Kansas because I wasn't born here, but I think of myself as a Kansan.
I gotcha. So university, or is it Kansas State? Is that?
Don't get us mixed up.
Kansas State, right?
Kansas State University is the agriculture college in Kansas. It's the land-grant university in Kansas. And then there's a University of Kansas in Lawrence.
Right.
Never to be confused.
Right.
So anyway, so I worked at the College of Veterinary Medicine here at the university forever.
So you've been married a long time. I'm curious if you discovered house concerts with your husband, or is this something that you imposed?
This is so typical, right? When one partner is into it and the other one. So the story goes, I have a partner in the house concert. His name is Joe Hodson, and about 14 or 15 years ago, Joe gave his first concert. So we've been around at least that long. And so his wife's name is Barb. My husband's name is Bob. And so we say that Joe and Dani love music and Barb and Bob love Joe and Dani. And that's sort of how it goes. he suffers, he's very sweet about it. He enjoys the music very much. And that's,
Yeah, but it's not his, it's your hobby, not his.
Absolutely. Having said that, he's the first one to cook burgers for the, for the potlucks and that sort of thing. But yeah, he's not really as into things as I am.
For people who don't know the traditions of house concerts, one of the things that's typical, and I imagine you do that as well, is that's putting up the artists overnight in a guest room and feeding them. And basically they're like a guest of honor in your home. Right. Does your husband get into that aspect of it? Does he like having company?
The earlier he can leave in the morning is fine,
Yeah.
Although he's kind of a shy and quiet guy, actually. Yeah. And he does okay one-on-one and has a nice visit afterwards, and he does enjoy them. But this really is sort of my thing. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and it's super common, and tons of healthy couples have different interests. Right. And right. The important thing is
he really is good about this, because for as long as we've been doing house concerts, we also open our home to musicians who are going through our area that we don't host. Right. So we have sort of the good band bed and breakfast going on here, with folks who are in our neighborhood. So yeah, he's pretty good about all of that stuff, including the time we had this lovely woman who we couldn't host but was coming through, and she pulled into our garage with her mother's giant van with this $20,000 harp inside the van, the full-size, great big, concert harp, and promptly locked her keys inside the van. She didn't want to leave the harp in the van overnight because of, temperature and whatnot. And poor Bob, scrambled with all his heart to get into he's a good guy, Fran.
Oh yeah. I certainly wouldn't imply anything otherwise. Was this an artist from our network?
It was not, actually.
Okay.
It was several years ago. She was in Missouri and she was going cross country and just couldn't quite make it back to Columbia, Missouri, which is where she was going. So.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Her husband's name is Jeff. It has to be her. What is her name? Long blonde hair.
That's her.
Tiny little thing.
That's her.
Oh man, I can't think of her name. Anyway, yeah.
It's okay, neither can I. And here's the worst part. She was traveling with Mary Ellen Kirk, and I can remember her name. Why can't I remember who this other young woman is?
So that's one of the traditions of house concerts as well, is you play somebody's house and they, before you leave, they say, listen, we might not always be able to host a concert for you when you come through, but anytime you're passing through, you're welcome to visit. And that's a super, super cool tradition of what we do.
We also actually help facilitate artists give shows that we would like to give, but maybe can't because we already have an artist booked that month, or it's too close to the sound of the last person we had. I have this really fabulous audience, and they love music, they love musicians, and we've facilitated 5 or 6 actually concerts for folks who called us and said, I'm going to be in your neighborhood, we'd love to play Lakeside. I think, I can't do it right now because I don't want to lead anyone on. Then I'll quick hang up with them and pick up the phone and call one of the audience members and say, so-and-so is coming through. Do you think maybe you could do something? And we've done that 5 or 6 times now, I guess. And it's usually a smaller show, but if they're willing to do it, the night.
Yeah, that's fantastic, especially if you do a small thing like a 10-10 or something like a weeknight show.
Exactly right. And that's actually one of the reasons we call ourselves Lakeside Music and not Lakeside Music House Concerts or house shows, because we make a big point of trying to promote music and musicians any way we can, help facilitate other shows, bed and breakfast kind of stuff, pick them up when they're in the round. Manhattan has a really, really, really fabulous acoustic music series called The Birdhouse. And we at Lakeside support the Birdhouse. We, monetarily will we'll give some money to support a show once during their season or whatnot. We've, I think when Ryan Hood played there, they came and they stayed with us that night. Couldn't quite get them in a hotel. So there are lots of different ways that you can support music and musicians, where we used to be able to before COVID, I suppose. And not necessarily just have a house concert.
Yeah, sponsoring festivals and sponsoring other venues, public venues is something that's super common. I'm grateful that you do that, because it's so vital. We started as concertsinyourhome.com back in 2006, and about 5 years later felt like we needed to embrace the culture more than the structure of the place that it's in, because so many of our house concerts in our network were actually not in a house. It was a library basement, or a church basement, or library side room, that kind of thing. Sure. So we felt a need to support these sort of non-traditional venues right away, but also those commercial venues that are so vital to touring. We don't want all of those to go away just because house concerts put a little bit more money in the artist's pocket. Right. On average. So that's why we changed the name to Listening Room Network. It was a gradual thing, but we felt it was important, and I believe it's more important than ever now. Tell me how you discovered house concerts. What was your first show?
Your biggest salesman, who I'm going to say, right? Your biggest salesman is Rupert Waits. The first time I saw Rupert was at another house show here in Manhattan. Manhattan has 3 pretty active house concert series, which, if you think about it, for a town of 50,000, 3 active house concert series and the Birdhouse, that's actually a lot of music.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. In any case, I went to see him, and, just sort of chit chat here, there, and everywhere. And the instant any artist knows that you have a series, oh, I'd love to play your series, whether they have absolutely no idea, what I've got, but everybody wants to come play the next gig. So he did come and play, and we just got to talking about it. And he's a true believer, and he really says, I think that you really would feel more connected. I think it's a great way to meet other hosts, connect with artists that you may not even be familiar with. And he was right. We did, and we've done all those things. I think being part of this community has really been wonderful for us in lots of different ways. I do a little bit of traveling, and it's very common for me to figure out where I'm going and say, oh, well, I'm going to Illinois, it's Springfield, Illinois, and these are the dates I'm going to be there. I will look up and see if there's a house concert in Springfield, Illinois, and whether there's something going on that night, I'll contact that host just to visit and chat. And if they happen to be giving a concert, I will invite myself. I think that sense of community is definitely what has come from Concerts in Your Home, Listening Room Network, and I'm a believer.
Thank you. It's one of the things that's so endearing to me, especially since we started the festival, because a lot of hosts come here from around the country, even around the world, and become friends, instant friends, because you fall in love with this hobby, and then you meet somebody that has the same passion. It's like, okay, we're friends for life right now. Right. It begins now. So then hosts go visit each other. So it's not just the artists that are touring and staying with hosts. Sometimes it's hosts staying. I've even heard hosts in our network visiting an artist and staying with them. So totally flipping the thing upside down, which is just absolutely wonderful. So what you described to me, though, that was Rupert convincing you to host a show while you're attending another show. So you had been attending house concerts for a long time. You discovered them in your hometown in Manhattan?
So my partner, Joe, about 14 years ago, or probably 15 years now, was living in Kansas City, and he got married, and it was one of these places. I live in Kansas City. She lived in Manhattan. Where are we going to live? And Joe says, I don't want to go to Manhattan. I love the music here in Kansas City, and there are these house concert things. And Barb said, well, do them in Manhattan. And he goes, okay. And so he did. And he the very first show that he hosted were Tim and Miles Thompson. Nice. Miles was about 14 at the time. I mean, he was just very, very young. And, you know, you go to a house concert, you get the bug, and that's sort of how it happened. Barb and I were actually friends. She and I worked together at the university, and she invited me to this house show. We were sort of new friends. I didn't really know her very well. And my nose was so thoroughly out of joint that someone was inviting me to their home and going to ask me to put money in a jar for, you know, a musician. I was really annoyed. But I really liked her, and I really wanted to kind of pursue the friendship. And I thought, yeah, what the hell, you got nothing to lose, right? And so I convinced Bob.
It's $20, right?
Yeah, you know, what the heck, right? And so we went, and of course, it was wonderful. And the biggest shame on you was it didn't get explained to me correctly what I was getting into. If I had known what it was, my nose wouldn't have been out of joint. I would have, you know, looked forward to an evening of music. As it was, I thought I was going to a party with background music, something you do in college.
Right.
So that's certainly something that we've learned for new folks when we're talking to them. We say to them, this is just the same as any concert you would go to. You walk in the door, you throw some money in, you sit down, you know, you listen to music, and oh, you know, they're still not quite sure, but once you get them in the door, you know, you can't get them out, right?
Right. Yeah, I think
it's true.
You're part of that too, is just knowing that the money's going directly to the artist. You know, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The whole concept needs to be clear. You know, this is how we do it.
So you started hosting concerts. Rupert Waits was your first show.
No.
Oh.
My first. I mean, that was. Right. So we were hosting for several years before we jumped on into Concerts in Your Home.
Oh, I see. So you were hosting.
Rupert's sale to me was, yeah, you've got this nice series and you're kind of up and going, but you know, if you were to join this community of like-minded people.
Got it. Okay.
Doors open to other venues, you know, other artists, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think you would enjoy it. And he was right.
Yeah.
So we have very few rules here at Lakeside Music because I don't really have very many rules in my life, frankly, but we do have a couple. And one rule at Lakeside Music is whoever I am booking this month or for this show can't sound like the person I had or the musician or the group I had the month before. We have a pretty eclectic series. When I say to you, you know, Fran, I like all kinds of music, I mean it. We book jazz, we book blues, we book country, we book Americana. We book bands, duos. I have a soft spot for singer-songwriters, so we do book a lot of those. But we book a little bit of everyone. The other rule that we have, which is pretty hard and fast, we don't do recalls. We don't ask people back. And the reason we don't is because we're such a small series. We're only 6 to 8 shows a year. Mm-hmm. You know, if you start asking people back, that fills up pretty quickly. So the rule is that we don't have people back unless the audience asks us. We never initiate that. But if someone will say, and it has to be after the show, because of the night of the show, everybody's feeling all warm and fuzzy and, you know, this is the greatest band I've ever heard in my life. And, you know, you just got to get them back. And it's just because you know that feeling, you know, you just feel like that sense of community and it's such a good time and you know it. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
We have booked Rupert probably more than anyone because after a show, someone or two will always say, I really liked him. He was really good. He gave a good show. And they say that about the Rough and Tumble. And they say that about Tim and Miles, you know, when they were touring, you know, we had them several times, but we don't often rebook.
Yeah, if you're doing 6 or 8 shows a year, it's really challenging. Because you know, you're obviously one of those people who are into discovery. You want to discover new music and you want to share it with your community. Having repeat acts makes it really tough to do that. We have some hosts, like if you're doing a monthly series, if you're doing 10 to 12 shows a year,
you can do that.
It's more common especially somebody who maybe the first person who ever played your house concert, or it's common for them to have like one act that plays every year. I've noticed that pattern. There's one act breaks through in a big way, and they're just, friend of the family instantly. And as a host, you've obviously had tons of great experiences. Are there a couple of like surprises, things that you would just have never expected to come out of having music in your house?
Yeah.
Pleasant surprises.
This is going to say, yes, well, it is a very pleasant surprise. This is going to sound very set up and or manipulative, considering where we are in the world right now. And all I can tell you is this answer, if you had asked me 3 years ago, I would have told you the same thing, because it happened so pointedly to me when we started getting a semi-regular audience. Kansas is a pretty red state.
Yeah.
Manhattan, Kansas, is a university town. So there's a little bit more of an eclectic group of folks because of the university.
Mm-hmm. In
my audience, you will find the hardcore Trumpers and the very hardcore liberals who are sitting right next to each other, having the best time ever. And that has been forever.
Yeah. And
I will tell you that the first couple times I started getting an audience together, and you throw a pretty big net, pre-COVID, we could pretty much, depending on who we were hosting, get 40 to 50 people. We max out at about 65, and we've had a couple of shows that have 65, but we shake out, around 30 to 45 or so. But to do that, you have to send a lot of invitations out to get that many people. I wondered if I should invite so-and-so, if I know so-and-so is going to come. And I just couldn't do that. So I just invited everybody and said, we're just going to see. And they come and they love each other and they love the music. And I love that. Because there's really, what's the reason that you host shows? Of course, we all love live music. There's nothing like it. But it's also for the sense of community that it fosters. I know that sounds geeky. I buy that. I really do believe that. I think that there's nothing like the feeling in the room with all these people who are sharing an experience. And if you really want to be geeky, I really believe that when you sit down and you open your heart to what that musician or those artists are sharing with you, which is mostly their original work, their original music, if you can be open to that, then you receive something and you leave more than what you came in with.
Yeah.
And I believe that if you have a good audience and they love music, that they do the same for an artist. I don't think there's anything better than that.
What is more unifying or healing than music, right? And
it's a commonality to everyone. When big things happen in our lives, when we marry, what are the things that we think of if we do that with a ceremony? Who are we, what friends are we going to have? And what's usually the next thing you think of? What kind of music are we going to have? What will we play? What song? Who will we have sing for us? Who will play our music? You go to a funeral. What are the things that you think about? What are we going to say about this person? And what music are we going to play? You go for a job interview and you get back in the car and you were just awesome, right? And so what do?
Crank up the radio.
You flip on Nina Simone, right? And you just sing. It's like, wow, it's the fabric in our lives that's so important. It doesn't matter, what your political ilk is. Those things are pretty basic. You may not be listening to the same music, but you're listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is so precious about house concerts for me is the fact that as the years wear on, music is embedded and part of so many things that we do as a background thing.
Right.
You go to the grocery store, you're going to hear music. You get in your car, whether your radio is on or not, you're going to hear music in the car next to you.
Right.
Music is everywhere. It's ever present. And what I don't see now, and I to confess, I don't have any kids, so maybe I couldn't notice this very much, but I don't get the sense that kids today or anybody gets a new album and spends their entire Saturday with it, with the headphones on, and dissecting all the lyrics and the artwork and what does it all mean, and this super deep experience with music, because it's ephemeral now. It's everywhere all the time. And house concerts give people a taste of music in a way that is so intimate and deep. And it's not just the music, it's the stories, it's the soul of the artist shining through in between the songs. And seeing your neighbor tear up next to you during a particular song, all those little tiny human things that make the music so much more powerful. And so for me, that's one of the precious things about house concerts is it's like, okay, yeah, I know you like music, but wait till you experience this.
Exactly. I love it. I love it when new people come, because generally if it's a new person to a house concert, it's someone who has never heard of one before. So what that means is, oh yeah, I like music. I love music. I think it's great. And I know my local church singer or the bar band that I really like. And I know Beyonce. I know Beyonce. But they're just completely unaware of this plethora of the most amazing musicians who are out there, who are not getting airplay, who, you're just not listening to on the radio anymore. You just don't see in the huge Carnegie Hall venues, you just don't. And so it's like, wow, these folks are amazing. And it kind of opens up this whole different world to them. I love that, I really do. And I think that without house concerts, without small listening rooms, I don't know, how would people ever know about these wonderful people that are out there and sharing their music with them, because there's no machine behind them to push them.
Yeah, I mean, just think of the millions of people who walk around sulking about modern music. Like there's just no good music anymore. They're fed up with what they hear on the radio. It's all commercials anyway. And they are trapped in their nostalgia, the music from their teens and their 20s. And I mean, and I'm rediscovering that stuff now, and I'm having a blast. But there's something about music discovery. There's something about creating some new cobwebs in your mind, like some new, let's wake up some nerve endings. And just like travel opens you up with new experiences. Music
makes you different.
Yeah. And I think that to stay young, to stay healthy, to stay sharp, I don't think there's anything better than the regular experience of music that you weren't expecting.
And I think that very same thing can be said about different kinds of music. I love it when regulars in my audience will come and they'll say, I don't really like jazz. I don't think I'm going to come to, next month, but, come anyway. It's a night out, that sort of thing. And they come and they go, that was really good. And they really mean it. They don't mean what we were talking about before, which is, well, this is, I'm feeling warm and fuzzy because these are all my friends and I haven't even, they enjoy it. They really like it. And I think it's because they haven't heard Americana. They haven't heard really good folk music. They haven't heard, whatever classical music. We've had a couple classical concerts. They think they don't like it, but then they listen, and they do. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of that, so such a big part of that is the presentation, right? There's lots of things out there that I could like, but if they're presented to me in a way that I don't,
right.
it blocks that connection. Just like if your only exposure to jazz is listening to Coltrane on an experimental jazz record, it's like it kind of like, okay, I'm pretty
right.
I'm ready to say I don't like jazz, know. But then you get it different ways, and maybe you have to go through Kenny G to get where you need to be. But whatever, there's a path there for most people. If it's presented the right way, there's a way for you to stretch. I'm the same way with country music. I'm the same way with traditional music. It's not something that I'm going to seek out or even just listen to on the radio passively. I'll switch the channel. But something about that live music experience, there's a human being in front of me, and there's a presentation and quality, of course, right? That's the thing. You're curating for your audience, not just any jazz act, but somebody that really thrills you. And that, to me, that's the difference, is that you not only get this presentation from a familiar place, they've had so many good experiences at your place that they're primed to enjoy whatever you give them if it meets a certain level. But I love being surprised. There's an act called Johnny and Heidi in our network that joined last year. And they're like hit country songwriters, but you don't know who they are. And they're writing, the kind of country music people are complaining about. Right. But on the side, the songs they keep for themselves
are great.
Are just insanely good. And they both sing well, and they have a great personality, and they just put on a great show. And I would listen to them any day of the week, even though they're kind of country. Right. So house concerts and this kind of the intimate venue and the presenter that you trust and love. Right. All those things make such a huge difference when you're talking about being introduced to something new, I think. And that's a service that you're doing for your community. You're opening people up, not just to love each other, but to love new music. So I just think that's wonderful.
If you are enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists we support. Your feedback makes a difference.
So let's talk about a little bit about where we want to go with the Listening Room Network, because I'm excited to hear that you're on board with this. Touring has always been a crazy, difficult, and risky thing for artists. The further out they go, the more of a disaster it can be in terms of cancellations, whether they're weather-related, illness-related. People who host concerts, even traditional venues burn down. There's all kinds of things that can go to messing up a gig.
Of course.
So the further out they tour, the riskier it is. And in our network, one of our core values is we really support touring. We're not simply about live music, but we're about live music that is done in a way where an artist can not only get a listening room atmosphere, but also a living wage. Right. And so they can prospect, they can play in new areas and at least have the potential to make money, as opposed to if you're prospecting and playing clubs, you're going to lose money your first couple of tours until you build an audience. What if you could tour and actually make money the first time out? Wouldn't that be great? So that's really been one of our core values as a network. And now with the threat of not only the existing pandemic, but the chances that this could be a recurring thing for many, many years. We've been lucky to not really have something in America for 100 years. There was kind of something in the 60s, but because of how globalized our world has been, and because of the pace of change in our society, we're going to be more and more prone to these types of disruptions. And on top of pandemics, you've got the wildfires now, and you've got all these other things. So touring was already difficult. Now it's going to be almost impossible unless we start to do something different. And for artists from New York or California to venture to Lakeside Music in Kansas, they're going to need more than one show. They're going to need more than one awesome person like you to say, yes, we'll make it happen. Good luck filling out the rest of the tour.
Right. Right.
So what we want to do in our network is inspire hosts to work together to create circuits. And there's different ways to approach this. There's a wonderful organization called Home Roots in Canada.
Oh, absolutely, Leonard. And know that group. Yep.
And so they started at the same time that we did, but the way they did it was very top down. And they said, if you join our network as a host, you're going to do 3 shows in the fall, 3 shows in the spring, and we're going to tell you who's coming and when. Right? You have to host a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday, Sunday. You have to fully sign on to their program to be a part of what they do. But they were catering to prairies, the Canadian prairies, where they're so starved for entertainment that they were more flexible. And we approached building our network completely the opposite way of saying, if you're a host in our network, we don't even require you to book artists from our network. We just want to support you and help you. And yes, if you book our acts, that's even better. But you can book whoever you want, whenever you want. It's up to you. We just want to support you and give you tools and spread the love. That model has to shift, because for every gig, artists have to send out 20, 30, 40, 50 emails. And when they finally get a show, then it's like, oh no, I booked a show in Kansas. How am I going to make that work?
Right. How am I going to get there?
So what we want to do is create sort of a hybrid of somewhere in between and really allow the hosts to take the lead in building this, because top-down stuff is just doesn't work anymore. And especially for a community, we spent 15 years telling you, do it your way, do it however you want.
Right.
We can't turn on a dime and say, okay, here's who's coming, and you have to do it Tuesday. So what we want to do is encourage and enable and create tools and resources for our hosts to work together. And that can start off with the possibility of, it doesn't have to be 12 shows like Home Roots, it doesn't have to, but what if we can get you and 6 other hosts in your region to, not every time, maybe 3 times a year, maybe 6 times a year, to say, hey, we're all going to work together. We're going to create a tour so that when you book Tim and Miles Thompson, they're getting 5 shows, not just 1.
Right.
So that's what we want to do, is we want to create sort of the subscription, this alliance building stuff through our network. And I just love like any feedback that you have, from that.
Right. I love this idea. I have loved this idea since I've heard about Home Roots, but I concur with you that there are some fundamental not problems, but there are differences with the way Home Roots runs and the way that I think that ideally something like this could work. For where I sit, I'm very conflicted about it as much as I support it, only because we've been trying to do this very thing for several years now. There are 2 active venues in Kansas City, one in Topeka, us in Manhattan, and one in Hutchinson, which is in southern Kansas. They are 5 very different venues, but we have worked together literally for years. If someone will book Lakeside, they often think of that as their anchor. I will pick up the phone and I will say, so-and-so is coming this time, this time, this time. What can you do? This has worked out so many times, but never for 5, maybe for 2 of us or for 3 of us. But the problem is the differences in our area. One of the problems, Manhattan, 50,000. We have 3 active house concerts and the Birdhouse series. The 4 of us keep a calendar, and we always, as soon as we book someone, we put it on the calendar, because we never book against each other, and we support each one of those venues. So not only do I have to think about what my schedule is, or my husband's schedule is, or what the university's schedule is, because if there's a football game or they are having a play or whatever, or the other house concert series, now I have to think about all these other folks and their schedules and whatnot. We are not so small that we're the only game in town. And so, of course, everybody's going to come out. We are not so big that there's something every single night in Kansas City or New York City or wherever you're at. You know, throw a dart, we're going to do the best we can. We're kind of that middle ground where everybody is kind of competing for the same audience. That's a lot of stuff to try and think about when you book someone, which is why I would love to have a series that I'd like to book out 12 months. This is my series. I know that's a good thing for an artist. It would be great for me. Can't do it. I cannot physically do it logistically with the way things are in my area. Multiply that by 5. It's really tough to do.
What is your booking window? Because you're saying that you can't go too far out. So how far out do you normally book?
Right. I don't even know how to answer that. I get what you're saying. And when I turn down an artist, that's the first thing that they ask me. When can I call back? Or what is it? And I know it sounds evasive. I have no idea. It depends on what the birdhouse is doing. It depends on who's coming through right then. It depends on the football schedule that doesn't even publicize their schedule until, June or whatever. We used to be pretty consistent 3 to 4 months. We've booked in a month. I have someone now who's coming August of 2021. I've never booked out that far. I don't have a booking window. I know that's terrible. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. But what you're saying though is when the right artist comes along, you can book something within a month or a year out if the gig is compelling enough.
Exactly.
Right.
And if I'm motivated enough to pick up the phone with my friend in Topeka and my friends in Kansas City and whatnot. And, a couple of the shows that we've had to cancel for COVID, things were just starting to gel. We were offering these artists 3 and 4 gigs. That's not bad, 3 or 4 gigs. And then they can, maybe fill in a little bit on their own. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work, Fran. I'm on board. I like the idea. I'd love to be part of it. It's difficult for me to commit and then not have an audience show because if I had my way, I'd have a show a month.
Right.
Absolutely. I can do it. I would have an audience once a month.
So let me ask you, if you don't mind, just digging in on this, because this is the stuff that we're going to have to ask these questions and face these issues with all of our hosts. In terms of booking far out, so you're talking about like football season.
Yes.
All right.
So we've got high school on Friday nights. We've got college on Saturday nights.
Or Saturday nights. Okay, that's right.
Right.
Okay. So and that's right, because I remember Kansas and Texas high school football is a big deal.
It is. It absolutely is.
And it affects even your music audience.
You bet.
Right.
You bet.
All right. So that means Friday nights and Saturday nights are during football season. That's in the fall,
during football season.
So spring, you're wide open on Friday, Saturday nights.
Spring, I have to deal sometimes with basketball. It depends on how things are going. If they're having a good season, we got to be careful. Spring is also when all the grade schools and the high schools have all of their little festivals and plays and proms and we're an odd-sized town. We're 50,000. It feels like a small town.
So that means, but what you're telling me though is that you prefer to have your shows on Fridays and Saturday nights.
Sundays, we used to have shows on Sundays. I've given up because the weather is sometimes fabulous and people won't necessarily come out at the last minute. Sunday night before work, maybe they'll come, maybe they won't. So what I haven't mentioned here about Lakeside in particular is that if you come to Lakeside, you are a committed music lover because you have to drive about 20 minutes from Manhattan. I'm out on 80 acres in the middle of the prairie.
Gotcha.
And that means that it's not like a last minute, let's run down the street or drive across town.
Right.
You have to think about coming out here. I live on a rock road. If it's a rainy day, you're going to mud out and Bob's out on the down the driveway with the tractor pulling you out. I mean, these are
Right.
things that really have happened to us.
Is most of your audience still working, or do you have a lot of retirees where Wednesday night is not a big deal?
We would never get anybody out on a Wednesday night. Our audience ranges from about 40 to 70.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are still working.
Yeah.
And those who are retired, you know, they don't necessarily want to drive in the dark.
Right.
And this is a drive.
That makes your situation super challenging. Have you thought about doing like Sunday afternoon shows?
We have done Sunday afternoon shows, and they're dicey. We've kind of decided not to do those anymore unless we absolutely have to. They're just, I don't know, it depends on the month. I can easier to get someone out on a Sunday afternoon on February than it is in June.
Right.
You know,
right.
because the weather's beautiful.
Right. So that's the thing. So logistically, which is a big part of why I can't do it administratively, I can't pretend that I'm going to pull all the strings and make all this happen. So we have to figure out what everybody's window is, get them to sort of offer that to the community and just allow communication and connection.
Right.
Because, I mean, you know, it's possible, you've done it.
Right.
So it's a matter of like, how can we make it easier or better or longer, all those things. So I'm super optimistic about it. Even in your challenging situation, you've been making it work for a long time, and you occasionally partner when it happens. So we just want to put what you're already doing. We want to make it easier. If we can create more hosts in your region, obviously that can double the number of people who have similar musical taste or who can book in the same week that you're booking.
Right.
The things. So it's all great stuff to explore. Dani, thanks so much for doing this. I think your enthusiasm is phenomenal, and I can't wait to share some of these little clips from today with people. I think you're going to.
Thanks for having me, Fran. I have to say, you know, without sounding, you know, a little like I'm blowing smoke in your ear, we didn't start out with concerts in your home, but we did jump on board. I love the changes. I love that it's growing. I love that it's become Listening Room Network. I love being part of that, and I love directing people to the site. And I'm enthusiastic when I talk to new or younger musicians. I always encourage them to look it up and see if they want to become a part, because I think it's a good thing. I really do. Thank you for what you do. I just appreciate it so much.
Well, I'm grateful to have you in it. And I'm also grateful because you spent a lot of time helping us evaluate new artists who apply to the network.
You know, that would be my one final thing here in terms of if you want to aim something at folks who are, you know, applying to the network. You and I have talked about this ad nauseum because it's the biggest thing in my life when I evaluate an artist. Oftentimes artists send such good clips in. It's easy to evaluate the voice, the music, the whatever. What I cannot tell as a host when a good clip is sent in, if it's not a live clip, is what the interaction is with an audience. Live music is not a video, so I am depending on what that artist says as the introduction, what the feeling is, as much as you can get from a video with that whatever, and I base that on personal experience. I've had artists who were so good. I mean, fabulous musicians, voices that, you know, make the angels cry. The show wasn't so good, and it was a long evening because they didn't quite have whatever it was, the connection. You know, they just didn't have it. And so it's really important, I think, to submit those clips where you have. I can be easy with an audience. You don't have to have a joke a minute. You don't have to bring them to tears. I just want to know that you can talk to the audience and make them feel like, you know, we're in this together. And yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, that's good advice, and it's we're totally on the same page there. Sometimes it takes 3-second intro before or after, or
acknowledging somebody in the audience, just showing any kind of warmth before or after the song makes such a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dani, it's so great to chat with you. We'll talk again soon. And
take good care, Fran.
I will.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover this community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions you have. And if you'd like to learn more about house concerts and listening rooms around the world, please visit and join listeningroomnetwork.com. You can email me from there. See you next time on the Fran Snyder Podcast.